I was 16 years old when I married a man I barely knew, and on my wedding night, I discovered something that would change everything. Something that made me understand that the person sleeping next to me was not the man everyone in Kansas said he was. He was something darker, something broken, and somehow, I had to fix him, or we would both shatter. My name is Helen, and this is the story of how I learned to tame the untamable. If you love stories about real love, real struggles, and real people who face impossible choices, please like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe so you never miss what comes next. We read every comment, and we absolutely love hearing from you. So tell us in the comments right now. Where are you watching from? We want to know. The morning of my wedding started like any other day on our small farm outside of Salina. Mama made biscuits and gravy. The smell of coffee filled our kitchen while my little sister Margaret braided my hair with trembling fingers. She was excited, but I could feel her nervousness in every tug. Mama kept straightening my white dress, which had belonged to her mother and her mother's mother. It was old and yellowed at the edges, but it was ours, and that meant something in our world. I did not feel like a bride. I felt like a girl who was about to become someone else, and I was not sure who that someone would be. John Brenner was 42 years old. That was more than twice my age. He was the wealthiest man in 3 counties, owner of the largest cattle ranch for 200 miles. His hands were rough and scarred from decades of hard work. His back was straight as a fence post. His eyes were the color of winter sky, cold and distant, like he was always looking at something far away that nobody else could see. Everyone said I was lucky. That was the word they used. Lucky. As if luck had anything to do with it. Mama had arranged everything. She had arranged it with Papa, who then spoke to John after church one Sunday. John had said yes without hesitation. He did not court me. He did not ask me how I felt or what I wanted. He simply appeared one afternoon at our farm, shook Papa's hand, and it was decided. I would marry him. I would leave my mother's house and my small room with the window that faced the sunflowers. I would become Mrs. John Brenner. Papa told me John was a good man. A strong man. A man who would take care of me and give me security in a world that was hard on women. Papa also warned me to obey him, to be respectful, to remember that a man's home was his kingdom, and I was to be his faithful subject. I did not ask questions. Girls did not ask questions in 1947 Kansas. The ceremony took place in the White Baptist Church at the edge of town. There were about 60 people there, neighbors, church folk, and people from John's ranch. I walked down the aisle on Papa's arm, and my heart was beating so fast I thought it might explode right there in front of God and everyone. John stood at the altar in a black suit, and he did not smile. He just watched me walk toward him like he was watching a cow being led to auction. We said our vows. The preacher asked if I took John to be my husband, and I said yes, though the word felt like it came from someone else. John said his vows in a voice so low I almost could not hear him. When the preacher told him to kiss me, he bent down and pressed his lips against mine for one quick second. There was nothing tender about it. It felt like a business transaction. The reception was held in the church basement. There was cake and punch and people dancing to a phonograph. I wore my mother's dress and smiled until my face hurt. John stood in the corner most of the time, talking to the other ranchers about cattle prices and weather. He drank coffee. He did not dance. He did not look at me. As the sun went down, Mama pulled me aside. She was crying, but she was also smiling. She took my hands in hers and told me that my life was beginning. She told me that what happened on a wedding night was natural and important, but it would hurt, and I should not be afraid. She told me to be brave and obedient. She told me that marriage was about duty, and duty was what held the world together. I did not understand what she meant. Not really. I was just a girl. I had lived my whole life on a farm with chickens and cows and my siblings. I knew about animals and how they made babies, but I did not think about people the same way. I did not think about myself that way. At 9 o'clock, John told me it was time to go. We rode in his truck to his house, which was a big ranch house made of stone and wood, set back from the road with nothing but endless land around it. It was the biggest house I had ever been inside. It smelled like old wood and leather and something else I could not name. John showed me to a bedroom upstairs. It was large and cold, with a bed that seemed to take up the entire room. On the bed were white sheets, crisp and clean, waiting for us. John left me there and told me to change into my nightgown. Then he closed the door, and I was alone. My hands were shaking as I removed my mother's dress and put on the thin white nightgown Mama had sewn for me. I sat on the edge of that enormous bed, my feet not quite touching the floor, and I waited. I did not know what I was waiting for. I did not know what was about to happen. And I did not know that the man who was about to walk through that door was not the man I had married. He was someone darker. Someone angrier. Someone who was about to show me that there were things in this world more terrifying than anything I had ever imagined. When John came back into the room, he closed the door behind him and locked it. The sound of that lock clicking shut is a sound I have heard 1,000 times in my dreams since that night. It was the sound of a door closing on my childhood. It was the sound of a cage snapping shut. He did not speak. He simply looked at me with those winter sky eyes, and I saw something in them that made my blood turn cold. Fear. Raw, animal fear. And beneath the fear, something else. Something I could not name but would spend the next 52 years of my life trying to understand. He took off his clothes. He was scarred, not just on his hands but across his entire body. Great welts and marks that looked like they had been made by a whip. I wanted to ask him about them, but I could not find my voice. What happened that night changed me forever. Not because of what he did to my body, though that was shocking and painful and nothing like what Mama had described, but because of what I saw in his eyes when he was finished. I saw shame. I saw regret. I saw a man who hated himself more than he could ever hate anyone else. And I understood in that moment that I had not married a man. I had married a mystery, and somehow I was going to have to solve it, or both of us would be lost. The morning after my wedding night, I woke up alone in that enormous bed. John had left before dawn. I could hear the sounds of the ranch coming to life outside, men shouting, horses neighing, the rumble of a truck engine. I lay there in the pale light coming through the window and tried to understand what had happened to me. My body ached in ways I did not know were possible. My mind felt like it had been shattered into 1,000 pieces. I got up and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked the same on the outside. Same brown hair, same small face, same green eyes. But something inside me had changed. I felt older. Not in a good way. In a way that made me feel like I had aged 10 years in a single night. There was blood on the sheets. I stripped them quickly, my face burning with shame, and bundled them into a basket. I did not know where the laundry room was, so I wandered through John's house like a ghost, trying to find my way. The house was enormous. There were rooms I did not understand the purpose of. A library with leather chairs and thousands of books. A sitting room with furniture covered in white cloth. A dining room with a table so long you could seat 20 people. I finally found the kitchen, which was large and modern, with an electric stove and a refrigerator that hummed like a living thing. There was a door to the basement, and I went down the stairs and found the laundry area. An older woman was there, hanging clothes on a line. She looked up at me with sharp eyes. "You must be the new Mrs. Brenner," she said. Her name was Dorothy, and she had worked on the ranch for 15 years. She did not smile. I nodded. My voice would not work. Dorothy looked at the bloody sheets in my basket without any expression. "First night's always the hardest," she said. "Mr. Brenner's a hard man. But he's fair, and he takes care of what's his. You'll do fine if you remember that." I wanted to ask her what she meant. I wanted to ask her if what had happened last night was normal. I wanted to ask her if John was supposed to be so angry, so rough, so full of something I could not name. But I said nothing. Girls did not ask questions. When John came home for lunch, I had prepared a meal. I had found flour and butter and eggs in the kitchen, and I had made chicken and dumplings like Mama taught me. The table was set. The food was warm. I stood nervously as he ate, waiting to see if he would be satisfied. He barely looked at the food. He ate mechanically, like he was fueling a machine, not enjoying something made with care. When he was finished, he pushed his plate away and looked at me for the first time since that morning. "Dinner at 6, he said. "I expect a clean house. I expect the laundry done. I expect you to look presentable. Do you understand?" I said yes. "Good," he said. And then he got up and left. That was my introduction to life as Mrs. John Brenner. It was a life of routines and rules. Wake at 5 in the morning. Make breakfast. Clean the kitchen. Do the laundry. Make lunch. Clean again. Make dinner. Prepare for the evening. When John would come to me in the darkness of that enormous bed, and do the things that left me bruised and confused and ashamed. Every night was the same. He would come to me with that wild look in his eyes, that fear and anger mixed together into something explosive. He would use my body like it belonged to him, like I was not a person but a thing. And when he was finished, he would roll away from me and lay in the darkness, breathing hard, and I could feel the weight of his guilt pressing down on us both like a stone. I wanted to talk to him. I wanted to ask him why he was so angry. I wanted to ask him where those scars on his body came from. I wanted to ask him if he felt as broken as I felt. But John did not talk. He gave orders, and he expected obedience. 2 weeks into my marriage, I found something that changed everything. I was cleaning John's office, a room on the first floor that smelled like tobacco and old paper. There was a desk with drawers, and I was dusting the surface when one of the drawers fell slightly open. I should have closed it without looking inside. I knew I should not look, but something made me open it all the way. Inside the drawer was a stack of letters, all tied together with a faded red ribbon. The envelopes were worn and yellowed, like they had been read many times. I knew I should not touch them. I knew I was doing something wrong. But I took them out and looked at the handwriting on the front of the first letter. To John, my dearest boy, it said, from your loving mother. I had not known John had a mother. John never talked about his family. I did not even know if his parents were alive or dead. This was only my 3rd week as his wife, and I realized that I knew almost nothing about the man I had married. I opened one of the letters. The paper inside was thin and covered with handwriting. My dearest John, it began. I hope this letter finds you well. I pray for you every day. I pray that you will forgive me. I know what they did to you there was terrible, and I know that I could not stop them. But please know that it was not because I did not love you. It was because I had nowhere else to go, and no one else to turn to. You were only 7 years old, and I was alone, and I did not know what else to do. My hands were shaking. I did not understand what the letter meant. 7 years old? Where was he? What had been done to him? I heard a sound upstairs, and I quickly put the letters back in the drawer and closed it. My heart was hammering in my chest. I had discovered a secret. I did not know what it meant, but I knew it was important. I knew it was the key to understanding the man who came to me every night like a man possessed by demons. That evening, when John came home, I watched him carefully. I looked at his face, trying to see if I could find a clue to his past written there. He looked like a regular man. A handsome man, even, with strong features and that penetrating gaze. But now I knew that underneath that face was a boy who had suffered something so terrible that it had scarred him for life. That night, when he came to me in the darkness, I did not pull away from him like I usually did. I let him hold me afterward, even though he usually did not allow that. And I whispered something I did not plan to say. Tell me about your mother, I said softly into the darkness. John's whole body went rigid. I could feel him trembling beside me. For a long moment, he said nothing. I thought he might hit me for asking. I thought he might throw me out of the bed or out of the house. But instead, he did something I had never seen him do before. He started to cry. Not loud sobs, but quiet tears that I could hear in the darkness. His shoulders shook, and I realized that this man, this powerful man, this man who owned everything and everyone around him, was breaking apart right in front of me. I did not know what to do. I had never seen a man cry before. I did not know that men could cry. Slowly, carefully, like I was approaching a wild animal that might bite me, I reached over and put my hand on his back. I felt the ridges of those scars under my palm. I felt the shape of his pain in the texture of his skin. It's okay, I whispered. You can tell me. He did not tell me that night. But something had shifted between us. Some small door had opened. And I understood in that moment that my job was not to tame him. My job was to heal him. And I did not know if I was strong enough to do it. But I knew I had to try. Because if I did not, we would both be lost forever in that enormous house on that endless prairie, trapped in our separate silences, dying alone even while we lay side by side. After that night when John cried, things began to change between us, but slowly, like a flower opening petal by petal in the spring. He did not suddenly become a kind man. He was still controlling. He still had his rules and his angry moments. But there was something different in the way he looked at me now. There was a crack in the wall he had built around himself, and through that crack, I could see the boy he had been before life broke him. 3 months into my marriage, I decided to do something dangerous. I decided to go back to that office drawer and read more of the letters. I waited until John was out riding the ranch with his men, and Dorothy was in town buying supplies. I went into the office and pulled out the stack of letters, my hands trembling as I opened the ribbon. There were 12 letters in total, all from a woman named Margaret, all written over the course of about 2 years. The letters were old, dated 1923 and 1924. John would have been a young man then, maybe 18 or 19. I started reading from the oldest letter. My dearest John, the first letter began. I hope you have forgiven me for what I have done. I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. I know that what happened to you was my fault, and I will carry the guilt of it for the rest of my life. But I want you to know the truth, so that you will understand that I loved you. I loved you more than anything in this world. I turned to the next letter, dated 6 months later. My dearest John, I have not heard from you, and I understand. But I must tell you the truth about why I sent you away. Your father was a cruel man. He drank, and when he drank, he became a monster. He hurt me and he would have hurt you. When I found out I was pregnant with you, I was terrified. I had no money, no family, no one to help me. When you were born, I loved you so much that it hurt. But I knew I could not keep you safe. Your father was in and out of prison. I was working as a maid, making almost nothing. One day, a man came to me and said there was a place, an institution, where boys like you could be taken care of. He said you would have food and shelter and education. He said it was a better life than what I could give you. I was so desperate, John. I was so frightened. And I made the worst decision of my life. I let them take you. I stopped reading. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. John had been sent away to an institution when he was just a boy. My 7-year-old husband had been taken from his mother and put in a place called an institution. I did not know what that meant, not exactly, but I knew it was not good. I kept reading through the letters, and the story unfolded like a nightmare I could not wake up from. John's mother had desperately tried to find him again. She had written letters begging him to forgive her. She had written about searching for the institution, only to discover it had closed. She had written about the shame and guilt that consumed her every single day. In the last letter, dated 1924, she wrote, "If you ever receive these letters, I want you to know that you were the most beautiful boy I ever saw. And I gave you away. If there is a God in heaven, I pray he forgives me, because I know you never will." I put the letters back in the drawer with shaking hands. I sat down in John's chair and tried to understand what I had just learned. My husband, the man who ruled this ranch with an iron fist, who controlled every moment of my day, who came to me in the darkness like he was fighting a war inside his own body, had been abandoned by his mother and left in an institution as a child. He had grown up without love, without safety, without anyone to tell him that he was worthy of kindness. And now I understood why he was the way he was. That night, John came home and found me in the kitchen preparing dinner. He looked at me in that way he had, searching my face for signs of disobedience or dissatisfaction. I wanted to tell him that I had read the letters. I wanted to tell him that I knew his secret. But I was afraid. I did not know how he would react. Instead, I made his favorite meal. Pot roast with carrots and potatoes. Biscuits with butter. Apple pie for dessert. I set the table carefully, and when he sat down, I served him with more tenderness than I usually did. He watched me move around the kitchen, and I could see confusion in his eyes. "What is this?" he asked. "A nice dinner," I said simply. "You work hard. You deserve to be taken care of." He did not say anything, but I noticed that he ate more than he usually did. And when he was finished, he did not immediately get up and leave like he always did. He sat at the table, looking at his empty plate. "Come here," he said quietly. I came and stood beside him, my heart beating fast. I did not know what he wanted. He reached out and took my hand. His hand was so large it nearly swallowed mine completely. For a long moment, he just held it. Then he pulled me down and made me sit in his lap. I was so startled that I did not know what to do. "I have been thinking about what you said," he told me. "That night when you asked me about my mother." My breath caught in my throat. I have not thought about her in a very long time. I have tried very hard to forget her. To forget everything. He paused, and I could feel him struggling with the words. But I cannot forget. No matter how hard I try, I cannot forget. And I think maybe it is better to remember. Maybe it is better to tell someone. I am here to listen, I said softly. If you want to tell me, I will listen.
And that was the day
he was quiet for so long that I thought he might not speak at all. But then, slowly, in a voice that sounded like it was coming from very far away, John began to tell me his story. He told me about being 7 years old and not understanding why his mother was leaving him at a big building with cold stone walls. He told me about the men who ran the place, who were not unkind but were not kind either. They fed the boys and gave them places to sleep, but they did not touch them with affection. They did not tell them they were loved. They did not tell them they were special or worthy or important. He told me about the work they had to do, the fields they had to work in, the chores that seemed never-ending. He told me about the older boys who bullied him because he was small and quiet. He told me about the nights when he cried himself to sleep, hoping that one day his mother would come back for him. She never came back, he said, and his voice broke. I waited, and she never came back. And I told myself that it was because she did not love me. I told myself that there was something wrong with me, something that made me unlovable. And I decided that if no one was ever going to love me, then I would not need love. I would not want love. I would build myself into someone so strong that I would never need anyone ever again. He stopped talking, and we sat in the darkness of the kitchen, his arms around me, and I understood something profound. John had not been raised to be cruel. He had been shaped by cruelty into a man who thought the only way to survive was to be harder and more ruthless than the world around him. You are lovable, I whispered into the darkness. I know you do not believe that, but you are, and I am here. I am not going to leave you. He held me tighter, and I felt him trembling. For the first time since I had married him, I did not feel afraid of him. I felt only sadness for the boy he had been and compassion for the man he had become. I do not know how to be different, he said. I do not know how to be anything but this. Then I will teach you, I said. We will learn together. It was not a magic moment. Our problems did not disappear because of one conversation. But it was the moment when everything began to change. It was the moment when John stopped being the man I feared and started becoming the man I could help heal. And it was the moment when I understood that real love was not about passion or romance or the things the songs talked about. Real love was about staying when it would have been easier to leave. Real love was about seeing the wounded person underneath the armor and choosing to help them anyway. 52 years. That is how long John and I were married. 52 years of mornings and nights and seasons changing and life moving forward in that big house on that Kansas ranch. 52 years of learning how to love someone who did not know how to love himself. 52 years of staying when leaving would have been easier. The first year was the hardest. John still had his controlling ways. He still had his angry moments. But now when the anger came, I understood what it was. It was not rage at me. It was rage at the boy he had been and the pain he could not escape. And I learned how to handle it. I learned to be quiet when he was angry. I learned to give him space when he needed it. I learned to come close to him when he needed comfort, even though he did not know how to ask for it. I had our first child when I was 17. A boy, and we named him Samuel. John was terrified when the baby was born. He held Samuel like the baby was made of glass and might break at any moment. I watched him look at our son with an expression I had never seen on his face before. It was wonder. It was love. It was fear. I do not want to hurt him, John said to me that first night, holding the baby carefully against his chest. I do not want to break him the way I was broken. You will not, I told him. You will be a good father because you know what it is like to have a bad one. You know what not to do. And he was a good father. Over the years we had 4 more children, 3 daughters and 1 more son. And I watched John become a different man as a father than he had been as a husband. He was gentle with our children. He taught them to ride horses and work on the ranch. He told them stories at night. He held them when they cried. He was everything he had not been given as a child, and he gave it all to them without hesitation. Our marriage changed too. The violence stopped. The control began to soften. I learned to speak my mind, and instead of punishing me, John would listen. It took years, but slowly, he started to trust that I would not leave him. And I started to trust that he would not hurt me. We built something real between us. Something true. We had hard times. There were seasons when the ranch struggled and we did not know if we would make it. There were years when John would disappear into himself, and I would not know how to reach him. There was the time when our youngest daughter became very sick, and we thought we might lose her. John sat by her bedside for 3 days straight, holding her hand, and I saw all of his love and all of his fear right there on his face. But she recovered, and John learned that sometimes, love is not enough to protect the people we care about. Sometimes we just have to hold them and pray and hope that tomorrow will be better. As the years went by, I realized something that surprised me. I had fallen in love with John. Not because he was handsome or because he was rich or because he was strong. I had fallen in love with him because I knew him. Because I had seen the worst parts of him and the best parts of him. And I had chosen to stay anyway. Because I had helped him heal, and in helping him heal, I had healed myself. The girl who married him at 16 did not recognize herself anymore. I was stronger now, braver. I could stand up to him and he would listen. I could make decisions about my life and my children and my home. I was not the obedient, frightened girl anymore. I was a woman. And John respected that woman. He loved her. When John was 60 years old, something changed. He started having trouble remembering things. Little things at first. The name of a neighbor. Where he put his glasses. But then bigger things. He would forget conversations we had just had. He would get confused about what year it was. The doctor told us it was a disease of the mind, that it would get worse over time. I watched the man I had spent my whole life with slowly disappear. Not all at once, but day by day. Memory by memory. And I stayed. I was there for all of it. I was there when he forgot my name. I was there when he forgot our children's names. I was there when he sometimes did not recognize me at all, and would look at me like I was a stranger. One day, about 3 years into his illness, John had a moment of clarity. These moments were rare by then. He looked at me, and I could see that he knew me. Really knew me. Not just my face, but who I was to him. "Helen," he said, and his voice was the voice of the man I had married all those years ago. "I am here," I told him. "Why did you stay?" he asked. "All these years, why did you stay?" I thought about the frightened girl on her wedding night. I thought about the letters in the drawer. I thought about the boy who had been abandoned. I thought about the man he had become. I thought about our children and our grandchildren. I thought about the life we had built together out of pain and fear and slowly, so slowly out of love. "Because you were worth staying for," I said. "Because I saw who you could be, even when you could not see it yourself. Because love is not about leaving when things get hard. Love is about staying and fighting and learning and growing together." He cried then. Not the desperate tears of a broken man, but the quiet tears of someone who finally understood that he had been loved. That he was lovable. That his life had meant something. John died 3 years after that. He was 85 years old. I was 68. We had been married for 52 years. I buried him in the cemetery on the edge of our ranch, under an oak tree that he had planted when we were young. I am telling you this story because I want you to understand something important. Marriage is not a fairy tale. It is not always beautiful and romantic and easy. Sometimes it is messy and painful and confusing. Sometimes you marry someone who is broken, and you have to decide if you are brave enough to help them heal. Sometimes staying is harder than leaving. But if you stay, if you choose compassion over judgment, if you choose to see the wounded person underneath the armor, then something miraculous can happen. 2 broken people can become whole together. 2 people who thought they were unlovable can learn to love each other deeply and truly. I was 16 years old when I married a man I barely knew. I was terrified and confused and I had no idea what my life would become. But I stayed. I learned. I loved. And my life became something beautiful. This is the story of how I tamed the untamable. But it was not by breaking him or controlling him or making him smaller. It was by seeing him. By understanding him. By loving him anyway. And that is the greatest power any of us possess. The power to see someone truly and love them anyway. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have experienced something like this, if you have stayed when it would have been easier to leave, if you have loved someone who did not know how to love themselves, I want to hear from you. Tell me your story in the comments. Tell me where you are watching from. Tell me if this story touched your heart. There is so much more to tell. There are secrets I have not shared. There are family stories that will shock you. There are truths I have kept hidden for 50 years that I am finally ready to reveal. But those stories are for another time. For now, I want you to know that I survived. I loved. I stayed. And my life became everything I never knew I needed. If you loved this story, please like it. Please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Please subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. We read every comment, and we absolutely love hearing from you. Tell us where you are in the world. Tell us what this story meant to you.